Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. So, if you have been listening to me for any time or following me on social media, you know I'm always talking about psychological safety. The last couple of episodes have been about psychosocial hazards and psychological safety in the workplace. But this past week, there was an article that came out from OHS Canada talking about the connection between psychological safety, psychosocial hazards, and belonging and inclusion. And, my reaction was like, yes, this is what I've been trying to tell people for several years. These things are so interconnected in the experience in the workplace. And I really want to unpack that a bit because for so long, when organizations talk about psychological safety, it's not necessarily in the same context of inclusion and belonging, but it is so tied together. So, as you know, I am also certified in the 4 stages of psychological safety with Dr. Tim Clark. And, that was one of the first assessments that I started to use when I started to do this work. And that first stage of psychological safety is inclusion. But the more and more I started to talk to organizations and talk to employees and really get down into what was happening, it was a disconnect from what they were talking about inclusion and what people were experiencing when it came to inclusion. And the piece that was missing was not only do I want to feel that I'm included, but I want to feel like I belong here, right? This is a place that I feel valued, where I feel seen, where I feel heard, where I feel connected to this place and this work. And what I noticed was there was not that connection when we were looking at it from that 4 stages perspective. And so it is a missing piece and it's a missing part of the conversation. And how are you creating these environments where people feel like they belong, that they can share their voice without fear of harm or retribution, regardless of who they are? So one of the other things that I, thought about as I was looking at this is so many organizations look at these works, these trainings as kind of checking the box. Yep, we did a training on psychological safety. Well, in my research and the work that I've been doing, I've also worked with the Maslow Research Center and Dr. Tim Tiryaki. And I'm going to, show a slide here that I think is so critical to the conversation. And it's one that I use with so many of my clients. And it shows that in the post-pandemic workplace, psychological needs are right in the middle, right? There's 3 levels. That first level is basic needs, where this is what people are expecting from the organization. And inclusion and belonging are part of that, right? People want to feel like they're included. They want to feel like they belong. That is a core element of it's a basic need in the workplace. The psychological needs, which is that second layer, is what people expect from their everyday interactions with their colleagues, with their teammates, anywhere across the organization, with clients. They want to feel that camaraderie. They want to feel that it's a positive interaction. And then that last layer is what people expect from leaders. It's a lot, I know. But I think it's so critical in showing that when we look at the post-pandemic workplace and the expectations that have shifted for employees, that we see it from a more holistic viewpoint. It's not just that the organization needs to create psychological safety. That psychological safety really happens in those everyday interactions with your colleagues. And so one of the things that we have done over the past several years is look at where are the gaps when we are talking about psychological safety and inclusion in the workplace. And we've created our own assessment. And this assessment really looks at what are people experiencing every single day. And there's so many things that, I've heard through time and time again. But big part of that is trust and respect, right? Is there open communication? Inclusion and belonging is a huge part of that as well as equity. That's a big piece of it. And we can always get back into that a little bit later. They want to be able to learn from their mistakes. How are mistakes treated? And another one is, do we have a culture of blame, right? When a mistake is made, how do we deal with that, right? Who is to blame? These are the things that people experience every single day. It's not that someone comes to me and says, Sacha, you know what? I don't feel psychologically safe. That's not what they say. They say, you know what? I don't trust that my leadership has my best interest in heart. I don't know what is happening because there are all these secret squirrel conversations that are taking place and we're not getting full information, right? Those are the things that start to dilute trust and create these barriers to psychological safety. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit today because I think it's so important that as leaders, as organizations, we're not looking at psychological safety as just a check the box activity. This is something that is ongoing. This is something that you need to check in at the team level, at the cross team level. There are conversations that need to be had. One of the resources that I have on the website is some of the questions that you can ask, right? There's some self-assessments that you can do to understand, okay, what is really happening with the team? Where are there gaps? Are people feeling uncomfortable to speak up? Start to unpack some of those things. And are you doing it at a team level? I think it's so important because one, that's how teams operate, right? When you look at Project Aristotle that Google did several years ago, I think it was in 2012, right? It was how the team worked together. It was not who was on the team. It was how they functioned as a unit. And so what are you doing to make sure that your teams actually function as a unit? What are the psychological barriers that might be there? What are the psychological needs of each individual person? Do we know what we need psychologically in order to be successful on a team? What I need may be very different than what you need. And so are we having those conversations to make sure that we are set up for success? And then this is a constant conversation. If somebody leaves the team, if someone comes off the team, if there's a shift in the team dynamic, are we constantly going back to these documents to say, okay, how have we changed? What is it that we need to do and pivot, right? These should be living and breathing documents that you use with your team. And so I really wanted to spend some time to talk about this because I think we're now at a critical point in our lives, in our work lives right now, where there's a lot of ebbs and flows. There's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of friction that is taking place. And we as leaders need to sometimes step back away from the work and really look at, okay, what is the health of my team and what is really going on here and how can I provide them with support? So I wanted to provide you with some of those tools to be able to do that. I will put into the notes some of the resources that we have at the Equity Equation to help you really guide your team, really get you into a place where you have at least some foundation in this work. You also will have full access to me and my team so that we can help and guide you in the process as well. So until next time, I hope that this is something that you've been able to kind of write some notes, walk away, get some resources. And until next time, have a good one. Take care. DEI After 5 is produced by the Leon Thomas Group. For more information, go to theleonthomasgroup.com.